It's time for the biggest story of the day. This is What Made the Cut with JJ and Alex on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
And, of course, this portion of the show brought to you by an incredible selection of Kia, Subaru, Chevy, Jeep, Dodge, or Ram, and now Mitsubishi in the family of Doug Smith dealerships. Nobody knows cars like Doug. American Fork, Spanish Fork, and now in Linden. Mitch Harper doing a phenomenal job, by the way, Mitch. I know you're our BYU insider for KSLSports.com, and you usually do a pretty darn good job. But this has been above and beyond, man. You've had an awesome week with these business meetings down there in Orlando. So, first of all, congrats. Second of all, what was the biggest takeaway that you got from these meetings so far? If it was a big picture item that you looked at and you went, okay, that's what the state of the Big 12 conference is right now.
How the Big 12 is pushing hard for that 5-11 college football playoff model, which I'll be honest, kind of surprised me because, you know, the Big 12 is not immune, even in a 16-team playoff, from only getting just one bid. I mean, they could be a league that only gets one. Last year that would have been the case in a 16-team playoff, but for them to push that, to me, says that they don't want to be viewed as second rate because with a 4-4, 2-2-1 model, that would have created an image that you are second class. Now, financially, it's out there that they are probably second class, definitely second class compared to the Big Ten and SEC, but the on-field product, you can sell to all your coaches, your players, that you've got access to that thing, and still being in a conference that has power in decision-making in the sport with the future of the College Sports Commission, they have a chance to get in there and get multiple bids. So it was kind of a surprising development this week because, and still it comes down to the SEC and Big Ten ultimately making the decisions as they have the memorandum of understanding. But as Brett Yormark noted today, that there's got to be real collaborative input from all the other conferences from ESPN is ordered from to the Big Ten and SEC. So that was my biggest takeaway coming out of these meetings.
Man, from listening to all of your interviews this week, you've had to do head coaches, ADs, commissioners, the NCAA. Like, what is the vibe like? I hear it in people's voices, like Harlan's voices and this and that. It seems in your mark, it seems intense down there. It's supposed to be Florida. Was anybody loose?
I don't think so, Sly. And it's a good point because, I think there was a feeling that you'd get to this point and they would have already had a resolution with the House versus NCAA case. They thought there was going to be resolution to that back on April 7th. And now this was going to be the time at these meetings to really drill down all the intricacies of day-to-day workflows with the revenue sharing era. Well, the revenue sharing era kicks off on July 1st, and there's still no clearance and no plan. And I think that's why you're hearing kind of these tense feelings of a lot of, forecasting what if instead of actual, this is the way we're going to go about doing things. And it creates a lot of uneasiness because if that settlement doesn't go through, which they've been working on for a year and a half now, that changes everything for college athletics beyond just the Big 12, but the whole sport at large. So that's why there was a little bit of a tense vibe with these meetings. But I also think that, people were excited to see everyone again because this is the first meetings where there hasn't been an onboarding, group of schools where bringing everyone together to onboard them. They've all been familiar with the Big 12 now, and that's kind of helping their efforts.
One of the things that stood out this week was that the awkwardness of having the NCAA president there. I feel like he's a guy who's just walking around and people and like wanting to start up conversations, and people are they're turning their backs to him. Yeah, what is it that the NCAA is doing? What's the attitude toward the NCAA right now for the conference leaders? Obviously, they invite him there and they have something. He was like, well, we're here to talk about governance and other important things. It's like no one really knows what it is that they do right now. Do they even know what they do right now?
They know that they've got a lucrative basketball tournament and they want to expand that, and the Big 12 wants to get on board with expanding it as well. The NCAA tournament right now is at 68 teams. Bill Self even said that Big 12 coaches would endorse an expansion, which to me personally, I disagree with. I think 68 is a great number, but the Big 12 would benefit. You got to think if it does expand to 72 or 76 teams, it's probably going to be those Kansas States, those teams that are on the bubble and they get in. It's probably not going to be the mid-major team, the Cinderella squad. It's going to be those power conference teams, and then that's additional NCAA tournament units, which is money, and then that money goes back to revenue sharing. So it's all about money at the end of the day, and that's why it makes a lot of sense. But that NCAA tournament is the one thing that the NCAA has that they know is valuable,
right?
And that's their big selling point, and that's still a big piece as to why people like Charlie Baker are still part of these meetings and has a prominent voice, because I think you're right, Alex. There's a lot of that would say, what do they do in this climate where you have no stake in football? You really don't have much say over these power conference universities and conferences, but they got that lucrative basketball tournament that everyone wants to be in.
I'm glad you named Charlie Baker because I had already forgotten his name after we had played this interview this week. Mitch, from the BYU and Utah aspect of things, you sat down with a lot of players that came to that. You sat down with Alex Jensen and Kevin Young, and obviously the two athletic directors. And what's the vibe right now of those two teams, and kind of what's the state of both BYU and Utah, since you're able to talk with so many of those people down there right now as members in this Big 12, and kind of what's the vibe of those two programs as they are related to the Big 12 right now?
Well, I think with Alex Jensen, it's a little bit of a learning process, a learning curve, and he acknowledges that for Utah. And but I think that there's a confidence that his ability to coach hands-on will be able to really help. I think he's really excited to develop players and really start to coach them, because this is all new. I mean, he hasn't been recruiting and constructing college rosters since his days when he was an assistant coach with Majerus at St. Louis University. It's been a minute. So I think that he's really excited for that next phase of summer practices and really start to form the team, because it is a new look group. It's a roster flip, and that's not uncommon. There are many coaches at the Big 12 meetings where they've got 13, 14 new players on a 15-player roster. That's just kind of the name of the game in college basketball. And Alex Jensen, I think, though, is just ready for that next phase. Whereas BYU, they're looking to take it to a level where they can really contend at the national stage with Kevin Young. And they've actually got a head start on their summer practices. They've already got a couple weeks under their belt because they built out their roster pretty early. So they've already got early returns on how they see, AJ DeBonsa and Richie Saunders working together. And Kevin Young pointed out that DeBonsa and Saunders are two guys leading the way. And that makes a lot of sense because, Saunders is a proven commodity, but,
right.
Even though he's a freshman, DeBonsa, how much accolades and recognition that he comes with, he has to be a leader for this team. Even though he's only a freshman, he's got to be a top guy both on and off the court. So I thought that was noteworthy, but I think that, BYU basketball is just, they're looking to do things that they've never done before. And I'm really curious to see if that expectations and pressure kind of weighs on them at all. Kevin Young kind of downplays the expectations piece, but it's going to be bigger than ever, and people are going to run wild with it. And how they manage that will be really fascinating to me, how this season plays out.
Yeah, man, ever since the signing of Kevin Young, there's been a great buzz, great trajectory for the BYU basketball program. Let's talk about, Sweet 16 this year. What is the vibe from the Big 12 with AJ DeBonsa going to BYU, all of the promotional value from that? How's that boosting the conference? What is your Mark's impression on what BYU could potentially bring to the table for this conference?
The Big 12 is really excited because they've got the top two high school recruits in the country coming into the Big 12, and AJ DeBonsa and Darren Peterson from Kansas. Two high-profile guys, and then Houston has the number one high school recruiting class. So, it's a different look for the Big 12 teams, where maybe some of them are factoring in more of the top-end high school players. A lot of programs have leaned on the notion of you got to be old and go into the portal to build out your top end guys. Whereas some of these Big 12 teams like BYU and Kansas, their top players will be probably freshmen. And that's just a different look. And both of those teams, by some early, rankings, would say they're 2 top 5 teams. So it brings just a lot of recognition and headlines, and all the issues that face Big 12 football don't seem to always apply with Big 12 basketball. Big 12 basketball kind of has a national narrative that, they're one of the toughest leagues, and it sounds kind of it sounds tacky, but that's the narrative. That's the perception out there from national media. They've got a cachet that they are legit, and Houston helped that cause by reaching the national championship game. They came close to winning it all, but they've got a lot of cachet, whereas Big 12 football, it's all unproven right now, and that's going to be the challenge. But Big 12 hoops, there's a lot of excitement. A lot of that momentum for next year is built on those young freshmen that we pointed out.
The very first set of meetings, of course, as the athletic director for Brian Santiago. What's Brian Santiago, speaking of guys who are, still the learning curve situation like Alex Jensen, it's a little bit different because he's got to get in there. I know that Mark Harlan, he talked about how he and Mark Harlan were on the same flight and they got to know each other a little bit more. That's always funny for me to imagine those guys having a conversation and kind of getting some things down. So in the end, what is it that Brian Santiago is kind of doing at these meetings, and what is he learning, and how's he doing in his first little stretch here as an athletic director? Obviously, the Jake Retzlaff news is something that he doesn't want to have to try to deal with, and they're trying to make that thing. They're trying to understand a little bit more about it, obviously, but that's a tough one to be able to swallow at the very beginning of your tenure as the athletic director. No
question, and it's a tough circumstance, and it didn't surprise me that BYU's AD, Brian Santiago, school president Shane Reese, and Kalani Sitake, they all kind of referenced their statement from the school and kind of left it at that. So I mean, I kind of expected that, but I had to ask that question for an update on Jake's status. But Brian Santiago, he is already well known by the ADs and administrators in the Big 12 because Tom Holmoe gave him a chance to be really connected to meetings beyond the spring business meetings, some of the AD meetings that happen in the winter. Santiago got to go to those. So really, Tom gave him the chance to be, in a great position to be next in line. And, he knows all the intricacies and the framework of how BYU, is going to build out its revenue sharing. And that was something that I talked with President Shane Reese about, that, Brian, he's been right there all along the way. And there's a feeling that, BYU can go to even higher level with Brian Santiago. And, he acknowledged too, he was very candid with me about his competitiveness and how sometimes that maybe has rubbed people the wrong way, but he hopes that they can all get on board. And I think that he's going to bring the right mentality of what BYU needs in a hyper-competitive environment and in major college athletics. You can't, just think it's always going to be, all this is set for the long term. Everything feels a little bit transactional in college athletics these days, and you need someone that's really competitive and going to be willing to go to bat for that athletic department and program to, take it to new heights. But we'll see. I mean, how it all works out, and the team's got to be good. And there's a lot of hype right now, but you gotta deliver, and that's going to be the challenge in front of Santiago and all of his coaches. But it does seem like he's got all the coaches that he's got strong relationships with to really usher in his new era. And, that's a good starting point when you don't have to maybe not have to make a tough decision about your coaches, because it seems like he's all on board with and believes in those individuals leading the top revenue generating sports.
What's the next version of this look like when, I think from last year, they talked about the number that was returned back to the schools. I think it was $470 million, and this year is $558 million. That's a big bump. That's a good jump for them. What does the future look like for what these schools anticipate that they'll get paid out versus what the reality is going to be looking like? When you talk about how, hey, from a financial standpoint, you're still a couple $100 million short of what these the two bigger conferences are getting. But when it comes down to it, where is the direction of this going, and is the Big 12 able to compete from the eyeball standpoint and the revenue standpoint?
It's definitely trending up from a revenue standpoint. They're projected, starting with the upcoming athletic year, this first year, the new media rights deal, just in media rights alone, all 16 teams programs will get 31.6 million. That's the estimated amount, 31.6 million in media rights alone. And then you pair that up with NCAA tournament units, college football playoff revenue, which is going to be a real big piece of that, new format. Everyone's talking about the structure of the bracket, but what percentage does the Big 12 get in terms of the revenue that comes from that playoff? That'll be a really interesting piece, but that factors into payouts, Big 12 championship events, and that's why, games like the championship games that feel like they're anticlimactic anymore. They took a little bit more importance this past year with the 12-team playoff, but they're controversial how significant they mean, but they help the revenue streams, which then ties back to those payouts. That factors into it, ticket sales at all the Big 12 events. So it's a big number, and it's expected to trend up because the foundation of it all is media rights, and that's going up for the Big 12 with this new media rights deal that'll be 6 years. And it was interesting too. Brett Yormark noted that ESPN and Fox will continue, but he also added that we knew that TNT Sports will have sub-licensed games, so that's TNT, HBO Max could be a streaming partner, and then also NBC with Peacock with some basketball games, CBS Sports Network with basketball as well. So they've got a lot of media partners that sub-license games out, and all the so it's a unique blend of media rights in the Big 12, but it's big money, but it's still not anywhere near the SEC and Big 10, and that's then kind of builds in that, can you continue to keep up? And they got to prove that it can't just be about money winning at a high level, that it can be something more. And I think that's what a lot of Big 12 programs got to sell. I guess that's what they got to sell.
Hey, that Texas money rolls, man.
Yeah. Oh, yes, it does.
Well, you saw the report today that the Cooper Flag apparently reeled in $28 million in NIL deals in his first year. That blows out of the water anything that we had thought that he was going to be getting.
Right.
And it's even blows out of the water. Are we actually getting real estimations on these guys with these NIL deals? And at what point does it are we actually just guessing and getting it totally wrong, and these guys are getting actually way more money than we think?
Well, it's going to be interesting because I asked Brett Yormark about this today with the new NIL clearinghouse that's going to be, and it's all tied to House versus NCAA, so it won't go into effect until that's all cleared. But it's called NIL Go, and it's ran by Deloitte, which will kind of manage and track all these NIL deals that are outside of the school paying out in revenue sharing. Anything above $600, they're going to evaluate supposedly all those transactions and see if it's actually applicable to that athlete. So we'll see if that actually works. But so that's going to be something. And Brett Yormark noted that there's going to be harsh penalties for schools that do not adhere to that. So it'll be interesting to see how that enforcement actually looks. But NIL's probably not still going to go away. There's going to be always workarounds. It seems like with all these schools, they'll find creative avenues to have a workaround to get a competitive advantage. And so NIL is not going in away anytime soon, you would think, even with the revenue sharing era upon us.
Well, Mitch, don't ever have Napolis, grade anybody for NIL rights. He has absolutely no idea what's going on there.
I don't know. Yeah, he said that Sly would have reeled in at least $150,000 his senior year at Utah. I thought that was really rude.
That's very rude.
Maybe that's what he graded you at. That's fine.
Yeah,
I mean, look, we don't know. I don't even know what the average if you're a really good linebacker at BYU, what are you making next year? Do you think?
Oh man.
Yeah, I mean,
Glasker's got to be making $700.
I love how they just throw the number out. Why not?
Come on, Mitch. You got the inside scoop. I know you're in there.
Well, yeah. I mean, I would agree. I mean, Glasker. I remember a couple months ago talking to him about that because a lot of programs probably sniffing around to see if there's interest. But he claims that he didn't really look at all at the portal, and he was more looking at going to the NFL this year. Nice. And he stayed committed to BYU and really kind of wanted to see it out with Kalani Sitake. But yeah, I mean, BYU though has done a good job with their retention, and that's but still probably compared to other places that he could go. Yeah, I mean, he could probably be a guy that's, I agree, like 700, 800,000, $1 million. I mean, it's crazy the money that's getting thrown out there. And it's all like rumor and all the numbers. How the accuracy of all of it is tough to nail down. But I mean, a guy like him, and too with this cycle, and some Big 12 coaches talked about this with NIL collectives, and then promises tied to revenue sharing. It's made for a really lucrative transfer portal cycle where players probably cashed in big, and maybe we see it where it levels off a little bit, but it's hard to imagine it just trending backwards at all with how kind of good it's been right now for college athletes.
NIL is booming.
Yeah. Mitch Harper, phenomenal job this week.
Yes.
If you missed any of the interviews, you can see so many of them that have already been posted on our KSL Sports YouTube page. You can listen on the podcast as well. And tomorrow on Cougar Sports Saturday on KSL News Radio. Mitch, I'm assuming you're going to be using a lot of the same audio as well to be able to kind of break down the picture of what this one looks like this week, right?
Definitely, yeah. Noon to 3, and it'll be busy and it'll be fun. But yeah, it's been a good week, and it's always kind of a hidden gem on the off-season calendar. And next thing we know, it's Big 12 Football Media Day.
Yep, there we are. We'll be down there down in Dallas-Fort Worth as well to take that one. And Mitch, we appreciate all your work, man. Thanks for coming on as well. We know you've been busy, so thanks a lot.
You bet, guys. Take care.
There you go, Mitch Harper.